boys and girls. Today we're going to be making some observations about place value, and we're going to get started right away. So the standard the students were working with today was being able to recognize that in a multi-digit number, as you progress in that number going to the left, that each digit is 10 times more than the one to the right of it. And then opposite, if you're moving to the right in a multi-digit number, that it's 1/10. Each digit is 1/10 of the number to the left. So represent the numbers on your card. My strategy at first was giving the students the opportunity to use manipulatives, base 10 blocks, to make some observations about place value. I had the students represent the numbers 1, 10, 100, and 1,000 using those place value blocks. And they were able to make connections and see the relationships between the place value as they increased and as they decreased. And they were able to realize that as the digits or the values were increasing, that they were following a pattern of 10 times as much as the one before it, as well as they're decreasing, recognizing the pattern that it's 1/10 of the digit before.
Like it takes 10 of these to get to one of these, and it takes 10 of these to get to one of these, and it takes 10 of these to get to one of these. So you're pretty much just multiplying by 10 to go up and add a 0, or you're dividing by 10 and going down by 0 to get the lower number.
Once all the groups made those connections, we came back together and we talked about the observations as a whole class, and we charted our observations on a place value pattern chart, realizing that as the place value increased, it was 10 times as much as the number before it. In other words, multiplying by 10. In the same respect, decreasing in that number, we came up with that it was 1/10, or otherwise known as dividing by 10, and they were able to come up with that with their groups. I had the students using manipulatives, base 10 blocks, represent an answer to a problem. For example, show me 10 times as much as 50, and they had to use base 10 blocks to show that on their desks.
She asked 10 times as much as 40, and I knew that 40 times 10 is 400.
When I felt like they were strong in that using base 10 blocks, I moved a little bit away from the concrete, more to the abstract thinking, by using dry erase boards and having them draw it, so they didn't have the manipulatives in front of them per se. And they were able to do the same thing. If I asked them to show me 1/10 of 700, they were able to draw that on their whiteboards, and that gave me a good understanding of who was grasping the concept and who maybe needed a little bit more support.
So it's like 30,000, you know, like when we're dividing by 10, you move the decimal point over here because you're going down a place value, or you're just losing a 0, and that would be 3,000, and the 0 means nothing. 0 times it means nothing. So you could just always just move the decimal point over.
After that, we moved more towards independent practice, and I gave each student a place value chart to fill out. And on that chart, they had to represent the number 10 times as much as that number, as well as 1/10. So doing both of those parts of the standard at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And then what's the math behind here? What are you doing so that you can just take away the 0?
You're dividing by 10.
Right.
And then I moved it more toward problem solving, which is huge with the Florida standards, is making sure students can problem solve in multiple ways. So I wanted to give them exposure to real-world application by giving them that word problem, and I gave them one of each type, one where they had to find out 10 times as much, and one where they needed to represent their answer as 1/10 the amount. And they were able to read the problem on their own, then process that information, then process it with a partner, and decide on a strategy that they were going to use to solve it together, and then they were able to solve it. And as that was going on, I was walking around and facilitating in the conversation and making sure their answers were reasonable and made sense, and I had them support their thinking with that.
Division. And how do we know, Jake, how do we know that we're dividing based on that problem?
Because it says 1/10 of tables and not times as much, right?
So go ahead. It's important for the students to have time to process with their peers and have conversations with their peers, to be able to understand the concepts and share their findings and share their strategies, because students can learn from each other and their peers by being able to see the different ways of problem solving and representing numbers and hearing each other's thinking.
I knew because it automatically, I knew automatically to get the ones out because it says 1/10, not 10.
So some advice for parents at home that are working with their child with this standard, with base 10, is relating it to money. You're in the grocery store, the total comes to $1. You can ask your child what are other ways to represent $1, what's 1/10 of $1. Just simple little activities that don't require them to do more than they're already doing. They can just incorporate it into their natural conversation of things that they're doing with their child already. I think it's important for teachers and parents to keep an open mind with the Florida standards. I know that it's a lot of a shift from what we've been doing or what the thinking behind the math, but I think it's really, really important that you have an open mind. In the classroom, in the past, teachers, would tell the students how to solve a problem and almost spoon feed them the answers, whereas now with the shift to the Florida standards, the students are coming up with the learning on their own, which is helping them become those better problem solvers to be able to apply that to high school, to college, and of course in the end to get a job.
I really like math because I find it easy and it's lots of fun to see how different numbers relate to each other and learn new lessons so I can use them later on in life.
I like math because it's fun and easy to do. In my opinion, if I could do it every day, I would trade it out for every subject because it's my favorite subject.
I know it's going to help us in the future with daily basic skills because in the future with buying things, you'll be able to do math to determine how much money you need for something or how much money you have left.
It's kind of sometimes if you put your mind to it, it's actually pretty fun.
We can do this, Florida!